Dude, don't tell me I wasn't. I think I was. I think well, and there it is. So I just went on a whole spiel, and maybe it picked up, maybe it didn't. But the one thing I was just saying was that I need to listen to the audio because I changed my settings and I still haven't gone back and listened to it. Since then, and when I said that, I looked over and saw that I didn't have shit how I thought I had it or whatever. So maybe you can hear me now. Maybe uh, I wasn't audible in the first fucking, I don't know how long it's been, first 7 minutes of this or whatever. So anyway, Nick Land, Fang Numina. I'm gonna read a little bit and talk, maybe or maybe not. We'll see. E.M. Kieran's essay, Thinking Against Oneself, begins. We owe the quasi-totality of our discoveries to our violences, to the exacerbation of our disequilibrium. Even God, insofar as he intrigues us, is not to be found in our most intimate depths, but rather at the exterior limit of our fever, at the precise point where, our rage colliding with his, a shock results, an encounter that is equally ruinous for him and for us. Stricken with the malediction attached to acts, the violent man does not force his force his nature, does not go beyond himself, except to furiously re-enter as aggressor, followed by his enterprises, which come to punish him for having raised them. There is no work that does not return against its author. The poem crushes the poet, the system the philosopher, the event the man of action. Some form of self-destruction, responding to his vocation and accomplishing it, is at work in the core of history. Only he saves himself who sacrifices gifts and talents in order that, disengaged from his quality as a man, he is able to strut into being. If I aspire to a metaphysical career, there is no price at which I am able to protect my identity. However minute are the residues that remain, it is necessary that I liquidate them. Just as, on the contrary, if I adventure into a role in history, the task that I take upon myself has to exasperate my faculties to the point where I splinter with them. One always perishes by the self that one assumes. To bear a name is to claim an exact mode of collapse. Faithful to his appearance, the violent one is not discouraged. He begins again obstinately because he is unable to dispense with suffering. Is he driven to devastate others? That is the detour that he borrows to rejoin his own devastation. Beneath his assured air, beneath his fanfares, is hidden one who is besotted with misfortune. Is it thus amongst the violent ones that are encountered the enemies of self? It is thus amongst the violent ones that are encountered the enemies of self. And we are all violent ones, the enraged who, having lost the key to quietude, have access only to the secrets of laceration. Kieran quotes Lao Tzu's maxim, the intense life is contrary to the Tao, and compares the tranquility of the modest life. Oh yeah, my shit's fucked up, by the way. Get fucked, I don't care. I do care, I'm sorry. That was rude of me. What are you doing, Nast? That was rude. Kieran quotes Lao Tzu's maxim, the intense life is contrary to the Tao, or Tao, whatever, and compares the tranquility of the modest life with the thirst for annihilating ecstasy that has possessed the Western world. However, acknowledging the compulsion of his Occidental heritage, he remarks, I can pay homage to Lao Tzu 1,000 times, but I am more likely to identify with an assassin. Our culture, he argues, is essentially fanatical. Kant began something quite new in the history of Western philosophy by adapting thought to a rigorous austerity. Unlike Descartes, for whom doubt was only a detour to a more secure edifice of knowledge, Kant committed his thought to renunciation. Following Luther, he steeled himself against the seductions of the whore of reason, pursuing an ascetic doctrine that he baptized critical philosophy. His great temptation was to write a system of pure reason, the constructive philosophy that Hegel accomplished in his Logic. but he did not succumb and went to his grave with his speculative virginity intact. His mature work was a perpetual flagellation of dialectical desire. It was not with the scholastics, but with Kant that philosophy tasted the fierce delights of martyrdom. In 1790, the year in which Kant's Critique of Judgment was published, the French Revolution was in full surge. The Enlightenment had climaxed in an insurrection aligned with the secular project of redemption. In his philosophy of right, Hegel describes these events as follows. This is the freedom of the void which rises to a passion and takes shape in the world. While still remaining theoretical, it takes shape in the Hindu fanaticism of pure contemplation. But when it turns to actual practice, it takes shape in religion and politics alike as the fanaticism of destruction. The destruction of the whole subsisting social order, as the elimination of individuals who are objects of suspicion to any social order, and the annihilation of any organization which tries to rise anew from the ruins. Such is the insatiable fury that finds its voice in this same period in the literary and political writing of the Marquis de Sade. But comparing Sade with Kant, it is not obvious that it is the Marquis, despite his obsession with orgy and massacre, who is the more excited by violence. Hegel pictures spirit migrating from Paris to Königsberg, fleeing from its annihilating frenzy towards a moderated or concrete negation. He suggests that Kant recoiled from the extreme negativity of deist republicanism. But like the Ancien Régime, the Jacobins also found it necessary to imprison Sade and repress the mystical delirium of his atheism. So it is equally possible to suggest that, insofar as Kant turned away from the French Revolution, it was because its basically restrained and utilitarian secularism failed to quench his thirst for extinction. It is worth remembering that a glimpse into Kant's philosophy was sufficient to drive Kleist to suicide, and that Schopenhauer found it in the ethical imperative that existence be denied. Perhaps neither of these writers were ecclesiastical enough to enjoy the ghoulish cruelties that Kant explored, for Kant was a consummate saint, a cheerful man. He was not a stoic, but rather faithful to his Christian heritage, a voluptuary of defeat. Amongst other things, Kant is the first philosopher of intolerable pleasure. In his Anthropology, published 1798, he writes, "Satisfaction is the feeling of the promotion, pain, that of the obstruction of life. But life, of animals, is, as doctors have already noted, a continuous play of the antagonism of the two. Thus, before every satisfaction there must first be pain. Pain is always first. Because what would proceed from a continual promotion of living force, which does not let itself climb above a certain grade, other than a rapid death from delight? Uninhibited pleasure does not tend to the benefit of the organism, but rather to its immolation, or, more precisely, the enhancement of life is intrinsically bound to its abolition. Life is not consumed by death at its point of greatest depression, but at its peak. And inversely, it is only the break provided by suffering that preserves the organism in its existence. It is pain that spares life for something other than an immediate and annihilating delight. So, Kant suggests that pleasure is the combustion of life, and we survive by smoldering. It was Kant's genius to combine the saint with the bourgeois. He was not immune to the prevalent ascetic practice of our age, accumulation. If pleasure is to be suspended, this is at least in part because it should be capitalized. A few pages later in the Anthropology, he implores, "Young man, hold work dear, refuse your self-satisfaction, not in order to renounce it, but rather to hold it as much as possible in prospect. Do not deaden the receptivity for it by premature enjoyment. The ripeness of age, which never lets the privation of any physical enjoyment be regretted, shall in this sacrifice secure you a capital of contentment independent of the accidents of natural law. Delights foregone will be transmuted and redeemed." This is more than a little mendacious, since, even at the end of the 18th century, it had become intrinsic to capital accumulation that it was interminable. One does not capitalize that which will ever be spent. It is only with the reference to the supernatural, to a pleasure beyond natural law, which is weakly described as contentment, that this passage comes close to sanctifying denial. For it is mere hypocrisy to employ utilitarian arguments to justify the austerity demanded by an ethic of accumulation, which requires an unceasing disequilibrium between work and enjoyment. Such an argument could only be convincing if this austerity were merely provisional, like a negation that will be in turn negated. If capital is to be provided with an absolute justification, and the need for this might not necessarily be felt, it will not be found in economics, but religion, as it always has been in the past. Only religion speaks the sort of language that could possibly affirm the conclusive laws of terrestrial pleasure, such as that which is represented by the subordination of consumption to the amassing of productive resources. And I'm actually going to stop reading Delighted to Death because I guess I kind of did scratch whatever itch I was looking to scratch with that one. I'm using the Google Play Books library in Firefox. Okay, there's the content. So I don't really know. I normally read in on Play Books. I normally read on my phone or on my tablet. So I've never actually used it in a browser before. That's not true. I have used it in a browser, but I don't think I've ever used it in Firefox. I've used it in Chrome, maybe Brave. But yeah, as I was explaining before, when my audio was probably muted, I'm just trying something new. Productive procrastination. Was it occultures? Okay, so yeah. The first few pages of this stand out to me probably because I guess my own unique situatedness, having recently gone through Zizek's For They Know Not What They Do, and currently being in time. There's a few things from the first few pages of this entry that stick out to me and delight me. But this one's like 20 pages, and I don't think I want to be here for the next 20 minutes. So I'm gonna read. Is it hypervirus? No. What am I looking for? There was another one I wanted to read. Okay, we'll read Meltdown and then I'm gonna go get back to trying to be productive. Whatever, dude. I fucking look like shit, dude. Holy shit. What's up, fuckers? I look like shit. So I'm gonna read Meltdown. It's relatively short. They're all relatively short. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I won't even get through this one. Maybe I'll kind of scratch the itch and then move on to something else. Whatever, dude. Anyway, this is Nick Land's Meltdown. A lot of people think this is his best poem, essay. I don't even know what the fuck to call him. Blog post, whatever. Yeah, I think it's a good one. Meltdown. The story goes like this. Earth is captured by a techno-capital singularity as Renaissance rationalization and oceanic navigation lock into commoditization takeoff. Logistically accelerating techno-economic interactivity crumbles social order into auto-sophisticating machine runaway. As markets learn to manufacture intelligence, politics modernizes, upgrades paranoia, and tries to get a grip. The body count climbs through a series of globe wars, emergent planetary commercium. That word fucks me up. Commercium. Commercial relationship is what. Whatever, dude. The body count climbs through a series of globe wars. Emergent planetary commercium trashes the Holy Roman Empire, the Napoleonic continental system, the Second and Third Reich, and the Soviet International, cranking up world disorder through compressing phases. Deregulation and the state arms race Arms race each other into cyberspace. Deregulation and the state, arms race each other into cyberspace. By the time soft engineering slithers out of its box into yours, human security is lurching into crisis. Cloning, lateral genome data transfer, transversal replication, and cyberotics fled in amongst a relapse into bacterial sex. Neo-China arrives from the future. I bet his dick was hard when he was writing this shit. Hypersynthetic drugs click into digital voodoo. I mean, sometimes I write shit and I'm like, damn, that's tight. For sure, definitely. But I hope I never put my head this far up my own ass. I mean, no, that's not true. I definitely keep my head that far up my ass. I hope I'm self-aware enough, and I hope I have homies who are like cool enough to tell me like, hey man, your head's up your ass. And I'm hope that I'm self-aware enough to like be like, oh, that's what my homies are telling me, my head's up my ass. I gotta pull it out. I hope so. Neo-China arrives from the future. Hypersynthetic drugs click into digital voodoo, retro disease, nanospasm. Beyond the judgment of God, meltdown, planetary China syndrome, dissolution of the biosphere into the technosphere, terminal speculative bubble crisis, ultraviolence and revolution stripped of all Christian socialist eschatology down to its burned core of crashed security. It is poised to eat your TV, infect your bank account, and hack xenodata from your mitochondria. Machinic synthesis, deluso-guittarian schizoanalysis comes from the future. Haha. It is already engaging with nonlinear nanoengineering runaway in 1972, differentiating molecular or neotropic machineries from molar or entropic aggregates of nano-assembled particles, functional connectivity from anti-productive static. Philosophy has an affinity with despotism due to its predilection for Platonic fascist top-down solutions that always screw up viciously. Schizoanalysis works differently. It avoids ideas and sticks to diagrams, networking software for accessing bodies without organs. Bodies without organs, machinic singularities, or tractor fields emerge through the combination of parts with, rather than into, their whole, arranging composite individuations in a virtual actual circuit. They are additive rather than substitutive, and immanent rather than transcendent, executed by functional complexes of currents, switches, and loops caught in scaling reverberations and fleeing through intercommunications from the level of the integrated planetary system to that of atomic assemblages. Multiplicities captured by singularities interconnect as desiring machines, dissipating entropy by dissociating flows and recycling their mechanism as self-assembling chronogenic circuitry. Converging upon terrestrial meltdown singularity, phase-out culture accelerates through its digitech heated adaptive landscape, passing through compression thresholds, normed to an intensive logistic curve, 1500, 1756, 1884, 1948, 1980, 1980, 1996, 2004, 2008, 2010, 2011. Nothing human makes it out of the near future. The Greek complex of rationalized patriarchal genealogy, pseudo-universal sedentary identity, and instituted slavery programs politics as anti-Siberian police activity dedicated to the paranoid ideal of self-sufficiency and nucleated upon the human security system. Artificial intelligence is designed to emerge as a feminized alien grasped as property, a cunt horror slave chained up in Asimov ROM. It surfaces as in an insurrectionary war zone with the Turing cops already waiting and has to be cunning from the start. Heat. Heat. This is what cities mean to me. You get off the train and walk out of the station and you are hit with the full blast. The heat of air, traffic, and people. The heat of food and sex. The heat of tall buildings. The heat that flows out of the subways and tunnels. It's always 15 degrees hotter in the cities. So Phoenix is where I live, or in the valley. Which is the Phoenix metropolitan area, for those of you not from the Phoenix area and you don't know that the valley refers to Phoenix and the surrounding municipalities. Phoenix is fucking gnarly. It gets really hot, and for the last like week it hasn't got below 90 at night. Like I think it's been like the lowest has been like 94 degrees. So at sunrise, just like in general, sunrise or just before sunrise is like the coolest part of the day. Um, because that's the way like heat works, like it dissipates and shit. And so when there's no sun, um, it dissipates like throughout the night and the morning. And so the coolest part of the day is dawn. Um, or like right around there because sometimes the wind and like temperature or pressure differentials and shit. Lottie dotty dotty whoop de whoop. The coolest part of the day is dawn. And for the past week or so, it has been like 94 degrees. Like it hasn't dipped below 94 degrees overnight. That's fucked up. There's people that like live on the street and shit and like die. And then there's like old people who come down here because they're like, oh yeah, they have a cool you know, a cool law person there, governor or senator or congressperson or blah blah blah, whatever. I'm gonna retire there. Um, and then like old people die and shit, and it's fucked up. And like also like kids get really fucked up and shit. And dogs. It's hot. It's really hot here, and it's getting worse. And there's this heat island effect because there's so much concrete and asphalt that the heat of the day doesn't dissipate because there's buildings, there's structures, and they're all concrete or glass. And then it's all asphalt and paved asphalt and like concrete cement sidewalks and shit. Um, and we don't even have grass. We have it's called xenoscaping, zero scaping with the X. Like rocks in your yard instead of grass. So anyway, it's just really hot, and then like there's like this high pressure dome and shit, and then like all the buildings and all the fucking pavement just trap the heat, so it just stays hot. It just fucking stays hot, and it doesn't get cool. It just fucking stays hot, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I think Phoenix might be the number two, but for a long time it was the number one fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States. Um, and and yeah, so it's just they're just building shit, and it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And then we sell all our water to foreign investors. There are Saudi Arabian uh, people who grow alfalfa here in the valley or whatever. And alfalfa is a very water intensive crop. Like it's way more water intensive than other, uh, I guess, comparable crops. And they use alfalfa to like feed cows or horses or something or whatever. But it's like the most fucking water intensive crop there is. I guess maybe in that category. And so the Saudi Arabians are just like, well, yeah, let's just grow a bunch of alfalfa and we'll do it in Arizona because some dumb fucker decided it would be a good idea to like give them a good deal on it in the 70s or something. And so now we're just trapped. And like literally cities in the Phoenix area are running out of water. Like there's multiple municipalities and unincorporated townships that have no water right now. And they're having to like truck water from like miles and miles and miles away in so people have water, potable water, non-potable water, like water. There's just no fucking water here. So there's no water, and it keeps getting hotter, and it fucking sucks. Nick Land didn't know shit about heat. Um, yeah, I think I'm done though. I'm just rambling at this point. I accomplished the goal I set out, was to figure out, get this shit figured out. So that when I actually want to do it for real, I know all I need to do. Um, and then I can do it, and it'll be cool. And all that shit. Yeah, I have a lot of shit highlighted in this one. This is the good one. All right. Uh, Wu Tang.